Well, Benny, we're so excited to hear your very interesting story. Today we're talking about joy, we're talking about perseverance. And so, yeah, can you give us a little bit of background on who you are and kind of how God has used you throughout your life?
Thanks, Jeremy. You are an ex-pilot and I'm an ex-passenger. Okay. Oh, they already showed the map. They didn't wait for my clue. So, anyways, since you have shown, you can show it again. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm Benny Prasad and I'm from Bangalore in South India. And my background is I'm a high school dropout. And that's my educational background. And at 16, I was suicidal. My father is an aerospace scientist. And being the firstborn in the family, I was expected to become like him. And I was born with asthma, and from the age of 2 till the age of 16, I was on wrong medication. That, as a result of that, 60% of my lungs got damaged, my immune system broke down, and I developed rheumatoid arthritis. And yeah, I was the best example of being hopeless and useless. Because everywhere I put my hand into, I was a total failure. So educationally, I told you, I'm a dropout. Health-wise, I had 6 months to live at 16. Sports, I was a very good athlete, but at the age of 13, there was an accident where a javelin came and hit my spine, so my sporting world came to an end. I went for music lessons when I was 15. On the first day, the guitar teacher told me, please don't come back again. So, because I was tone deaf and beat deaf. So that's my background.
Sorry, this is the first word that came to mind. But it looks like it turned out, there must be a good story after this. Benny, that's an amazing way to start. So tell us, how did you come up with this idea to travel the world? I'm sure all of us want to travel the world, but how did you decide I'm going to visit every single country? Can you tell us that story?
Yeah. See, normally I'm so used to giving an unfinished version of my story, which makes people want to ask what happened next, and that gives me the opportunity. So, yeah, at 16, at the lowest point of my life, where I almost became an atheist, lost my interest in God, I went to a youth camp, and my plan was after 3 days, I would run away to Goa and kill myself. And but Jesus showed up on the second day, and I heard the audible voice of Jesus Christ when he said, Benny, even though you are called useless, I want you, and I can transform your life and make you a new person. And it was amazing that Jesus would speak. You know, we all believe in God and here and there. I still remember when I was speaking in North Korea, when one of the officials came and asked me, it could have been your own imagination that saved you. How can you say that Jesus saved you? And I told him, my own imagination told me to kill myself. And it has to be a supernatural power that could overwrite my plans. And so I give that credit to Jesus. Until today, wherever I am, I will never hide the fact that Jesus came into my life at 16. So when I surrendered my life to Jesus, I had nothing, which is a good start. You know, when you come with all your high expectations, it's very difficult because you have your preconceived understanding of how God will bless you. But here I had nothing. Wonderful way to start. And I asked Jesus, what do you want me to do with my life? And he said, Benny, I want you to travel to every country in the world by 2010. And my first question is that how can I travel? Because I'm a YWAM missionary. We don't have a salary, and we live by faith. And I have a very strong financial principle where I never ask for money, never borrow money, I never take a loan from the bank, or trust the credit card. These were my financial principles. Till today, it's the same. And I have an Indian passport, which requires visas to almost every country in the world. And so I gave a list of reasons why this is not possible, right? And then Jesus very beautifully says, what is impossible for man is possible for me. And so that is what he did. So this is my one passport. And this is the proof of how I've been to every country in the world. And that's the map of my travels. better than the Emirates map, actually.
All the Emirates people here are just like, oh, yes. But you give them something to look forward to. Well, that's, what an amazing story. It's so true that when God tells you to do it, it's like he's responsible to make it happen. Like whenever I was an airline pilot for 20 years, last 10 years at Emirates, flying all over the world, and obviously whenever God told me that, my wife was pregnant. And so I went to my pregnant wife and said, hey, I want to quit this really successful job to be a pastor. And she was like, I don't think that's God. And it's just kind of this, like, when God tells you, okay, well, he's got to provide, or else it wasn't God. And so, amazing. So God provided. Like, how did it happen? Can you tell us one story of how God provided for you with you not asking?
Oh, I'll give you an example. At the peak of my travels, I was traveling at about 50 countries every year. Sometimes I was in 3 countries in a day. I'm not talking about airports. Like morning I'm ministering in Tunisia, afternoon I'm ministering in Morocco, in the evening I'm in Paris. And all of my travels, I paid my tickets, never asked for money. Every concert I've done, whether it's the FIFA World Cup or the Olympic Games or name the event, I have never charged till today. And it's the simple faith that I said, God, you asked me to travel, so you will be my faithful provider. So I'm your traveler, you are mine. And there was a time, I remember in Tunisia, I finished speaking in the church in the morning. I'm rushing to the airport, and I'm taken to this parking lot to get into the car. A black African man comes to me and he says, can I have a minute of your time? And I've never seen him before, and I've never seen him after. I said, I can only give you 1 minute because I have to rush to the airport. I have an event in Morocco. He takes an envelope and he gives it to me. And he said, God bless you. That's it. Nothing. So I went to the airport and I wanted to open and see what is inside, just in case if...
security was going to stop you.
Security. And when I opened, I was amazed. There was 1,000 euros just for being at the parking lot, So that's one of the stories. And there's so many ways that God has provided from, provision, money has never been the problem. The biggest challenge I tell the world today is not about raising money or money matters. Actually, the greater challenge is the integrity in how we utilize that money. That is a greater challenge than just money. So that's one story.
That's interesting. Tell us, since today's message is about perseverance, tell us about some times as you've traveled throughout this world. You must have gone through some difficult times and some challenging times. What were some of the things where you had to persevere through, where you had joy in maybe difficult situations?
Yeah, the reason I brought my passport, I'm the only Christian who carries a passport to church, So when I look at my first passport, 19th of February 2002 is when I took my first flight as a concert artist. When Jesus told me, I'll take you to every country in the world, my first flight was from Delhi to Moscow. And whatever money I had, I'd saved up, bought my first plane ticket, and with total obedience to God's call, against all odds. Nobody could believe that this was possible. And so I landed in Moscow. And for all that I did to obey God's voice, they asked me for a bribe of $50. This was in 2002. Now, I'm a Christian, and I want to stick to what the Bible teaches without trying to interpret in different terms, right? And there's no black, gray, blue, no. It's white is white and black. So I said, I'm a Christian, I cannot give a bribe. So they detained me in the airport for 30 hours. And outside, Celestine from Campus Crusade is waiting. I was going to do my first ever concert in the evening in Moscow, but I'm stuck in the airport for 30 hours. And it was so hard. I prayed a lot, cried a lot, did everything. And I said, God, I've done the right thing. And I'm supposed to have a wonderful start. And this is the opening act, you know. And so after 30 hours, finally the officer comes to me. And I said, wow, finally God answered my prayers. He tapped on my shoulder because I was sleeping on the floor. By then I was exhausted. He tapped on my shoulder and I said, wow, God came through. And I looked at him and he said, we have decided to deport you back to India. So I'm sitting in the plane, and in those days, smoking was allowed in the plane. And the guy sitting next to me is smoking his lungs out, and I only have 40% lungs. And I'm struggling in my mind with the situation, struggling in my health to breathe. And I'm wondering, is it really worth following Jesus? Because is this what would you get back for following him? And then I land in Delhi. In fact, all of this, when you read my book, you will get the full picture of that. But when I landed in Delhi, my guitar and my suitcase did not arrive. And the ground staff, they said, when they checked, they said, your guitar is in Latvia and your suitcase is in Sweden or somewhere. And I'm completely stripped off. And the only reason I could still hold on is because of his promises. And I've learned that in the midst of all these things, today when I hold my passports and I see my map, you know, I can tell the world about the wonders that God has done and all kinds of things. But what kept me moving is my faith in the promises of Jesus Christ, because he will never fail. And it might not be the way I want it, but I know for sure that he who began a good work in you is faithful to complete it. And that faith in him made me persevere towards the goal. And I've learned today that I will not allow my circumstances to define my faith, but it will be the promises and the word of God that defines who Jesus is to me, not the miracles, not the world record, not the success.
And I feel like I don't need to say anything else. We can just close right here and end. Benny, just what is one last thing, one last question? What is one thing that you could say just to encourage people who are going through a hard time, or maybe a story that you've gone through, just something else to encourage the people that are here today? How can you bless them?
1 Peter chapter 3, verse 8 onwards, if you read, it'll say, first of all, nobody will harm you for doing good or doing right. But even if you have to go through this challenge for doing the right thing, you are blessed. So for me, in the midst of all these challenges that I go through, what keeps me moving in joy is that I am blessed for suffering for doing the right thing. And if there's anyone here going through a challenge, even though you are walking in the path of righteousness, you are doing the right thing. And all that you have gotten is you're going through this painful journey, or there is hurt, or there is loss. I would encourage you to know that you are blessed for suffering for doing the right thing. And I'll just close with a couple of incidences. One was, after I traveled to every country in the world, God called me to build a cafe called Chai 316 in Bangalore, which is a 400-seater cafe. But it's a non-commercial cafe. It is a cafe to work in the area of mental health. We rescue one college student from committing suicide every week. But as God provided all the finances, it was $1 million to build it. And everything was easy, really. There was no problem at all. But there were two brothers, wonderful Christian brothers from the Middle East, who told me that we will help you to handle your finances, because I was traveling a lot. And I was so thankful to God that there was somebody there to do this. Long story short, these two brothers ended up cheating me, where they ended up using this money, about $300,000. They used it into their business, and the business went into a loss. They never paid back. Every year they would say, we will pay you back, pay you back. Never happened. But in 2020, as I was praying, and I was reading the news when the German finance minister committed suicide with the fear of what is happening with the economy because of COVID, God reminded me about these two brothers. And he told me, Benny, I want you to forgive them. And I said, God, what do you mean by that? He said, I want you to forgive the debt they owe. And I'm like telling God, do you know how much money they owe me? We like tried to give the update of our latest news to God as though he has not known about us, And I said, God, I'm a simple missionary. My wife and myself, we live a very, very simple life. And $300,000 is a huge amount. But God said, I want you to forgive them. So I had to call them. And I said, God, this is what God told me to do. As in spite of the mess you brought in, and from today onwards, you owe me no money. I've deleted all the WhatsApp messages, SMSs, email, every track record, which means from today onwards, you owe me nothing. And when I look back, I said, wow, God, first thing, you provided me with so much money. Secondly, you even gave me the courage to forgive someone of so much of money. And when I look back, I'm so thankful and joyful to God that he could even give me the strength and the courage to forgive someone who has done harm, even though all I was doing is to do the right thing in life. So I encourage you all, don't get tired of doing the right thing. Don't get tired of doing the good thing. But I know for sure one day in his time, he will make all things beautiful, like what he has done from a broken person who was going to die in 6 months at the age of 16, who failed miserably in life, to breaking the world record. There's nothing. Even he took me to North Korea. In fact, the only country that ever sponsored my mission trip is the government of North Korea. They are the only ones. Yeah, for that, next time I'll share the story for now. Yes.